In Western Oregon, this is NBC 16 News at 6:30.
First at 6:30, the manhunt apparently over in Linn County, but the suspect is still at large. Good evening. Thanks for joining us for NBC 16 News at 6:30. I'm Alan Matthews.
And I'm Gold Meadows. The Linn County Sheriff's Office has left the area in Sweet Home where they were searching for a suspect wanted for felony assault.
Tyler Lands has outstanding felony warrants for assault. According to the Sheriff's Office, Sweet Home police tried to arrest Lands just before 1 this afternoon, but he left his vehicle and fled on foot in the area of Springer Road and Upper Calapooia Drive.
Deputies left around 5:45 this evening, saying they believe Lands is no longer in the area and that residents can return to their homes. If you see Lands or know his whereabouts, officials say don't approach him and call 911. Moving now to weather with a live look over Eugene tonight. Alan Matthews has a first look at your forecast, and we're in for some treacherous weather.
Yeah, actually, it's going to be a bit on the risky side tomorrow morning. I don't know if risky is the word I want to use, but I mean, it is going to be a little bit on the hazardous side as we are looking at ice accumulation for the Willamette Valley to get your day off to a start. Let's show you what's going on right now. And we are going to have an ice storm warning starting in effect tonight at 10. That's going to run until Friday morning at 4. That's for the Willamette Valley, looking at the possibility of 1/10 of an inch to 3/10 of an inch of ice accumulation during that time span. We do have a winter weather advisory that will be in effect for the Cascades for Lane and Linn counties. That starts tomorrow morning at 4, runs until Friday night at 10. Could see 6 to 12 inches of snowfall and a little bit of ice accumulation there as well. A winter weather advisory in effect for the coast. That starts tomorrow morning at 4, runs until Friday morning. Could maybe see a little bit of an ice issue out there as well. And then a winter weather advisory in effect for the Cascades in Douglas County. That starts tomorrow at 1, runs until Friday afternoon at 1. They could also be looking at 6 to 12 inches of snowfall. Again, a lot happening, and we're going to break it all down with your full forecast in just a little bit.
Thanks, Alan. And people in Eugene were definitely feeling the cold this week, with EWEB seeing its highest energy demand since 2017. The utility company said Tuesday morning around 8 a.m., demand peaked at 493 megawatts of power to help heat homes in the area. Now, at the time, temps were in the mid-20s. EWEB says its historic peak demand was back in 2013 when temps were 10 below zero, with demands coming in at over 550 megawatts of power. Despite the cold and increased demand, EWEB says it's confident in its power supply going forward.
We have a really reliable supply of power. We get our energy mostly from hydropower, and those resources are able to meet our needs. And we have hit some of the coldest days of the year already. We might get another cold snap. You never know. February is still young.
EWEB says repair crews are on standby in case the freezing rain and cold temperatures tonight cause any outages.
If you can get $1 trillion of economic growth and you can cut the budget deficit by $1 trillion, between now and next year, there is no inflation.
Cutting the federal budget in half. That's the goal of the Trump administration, outlined from the Oval Office Tuesday by Elon Musk. But the administration's ambitions could mean nonprofits eventually take a hit. On Tuesday, a federal appeals court stopped an attempt by the president to push forward a broad federal funding freeze that's loomed over nonprofits since January 28th. Nonprofits across Lane County fear vital community services are in jeopardy either now or later, whether or not the courts intervene.
Some of the things that we found, which are shocking, billions and billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse.
With President Donald Trump on a mission to put a pin in government spending, leadership at food banks, churches, and other nonprofits across Lane County are on edge, waiting for a federal funding freeze to go into effect. Through federal funds, one of those nonprofits, HIV Alliance, offers hundreds of clients preventative care, and those patients often either don't have health insurance or are on Medicaid and would otherwise go without care.
PrEP is a medication that prevents HIV infection. It's either a pill you can take every day or an injection you can take every 2 months. And so we have a contract with the CDC to provide that to the community. And so we want to make sure that we're continuing to able to prevent HIV infections in our community. Wow, those folks will be immediately impacted should these services go away. HIV rates affect everyone in our community.
As of now, HIV Alliance hasn't been impacted by the freeze, though others like Head Start of Lane County were unable to access federal funds. Nonprofit Association of Oregon, which supports some 1,400 nonprofits statewide and more than 2,000 in Lane County, says most organizations can dip into reserve funds, but even those will run out if cuts do come.
We continue to see and hear that nonprofits are unable to access the funding that they're supposed to be able to access through their federal portals. So there's a lot of fear and concern for organizations that rely on federal funding of how are they going to continue to operate if those funds do not get released. If they are unable to continually receive their federal funding, which pays their payroll, at some point, their reserves will run out, and at some point they will have to close their doors.
For nonprofits who don't receive federal funding, NAO says the competition for private funding will ramp up if cuts come around with a new federal budget. And with diversity, equity, and inclusion cut from federal departments, the organization says nonprofits serving marginalized groups also fear what could happen to funds if they decline to scrub DEI from their websites. Trump right-hand billionaire Elon Musk says cutting federal spending by at least $1 trillion is imperative.
We're essentially going to bankrupt the country. So what I really want to say is, like, it's not optional for us to reduce the federal expenses. It's essential. It's essential for America to remain solvent as a country, and it's essential for America to have the resources necessary to provide things to its citizens and not simply be servicing vast amounts of debt.
The federal spending freeze on loans and grants announced on January 28th was blocked by a federal judge the same day, and a day later, the White House announced it rescinded the freeze memo, but not the freeze.
Monaghan says Lane County is the second largest per capita for number of nonprofits after the Portland metro area. Meanwhile, President Trump says the administration will take a look at judges calling the judicial opposition, quote, a serious violation. Now, he didn't elaborate on what exactly judges were allegedly violating.
From the front rooms to a church parking lot, former Whitebird employees have started their own homeless outreach group in downtown Eugene. NBC 16's Tiffany Lewis spoke to volunteers to learn more about their efforts to fill what they call a vacuum left by the closure of Whitebird's front rooms back in December.
A group of former Front Rooms employees have launched a new operation at First Christian Church, hoping to fill the gap left behind when the long-standing service hub for homeless people shut down.
We just branched off and are hoping to fill all of these gaps for all of our unhoused friends out here.
Raven, or Radical Assistance for Vulnerable Eugene Neighbors, operates 5 days a week, offering food, clothing, hygiene supplies, and a space where people can rest without immediately being asked to leave.
I feel like working at Front Rooms felt like such a special and such a unique circumstance because it didn't just feel like handing out resources to people. It felt like we were making friendships and building connections.
Volunteers are hoping to maintain those relationships with clients, prioritizing low-barrier services and trauma-informed care.
I'm just grateful that these people exist and that this is a space that I can come and get a cup of coffee and talk to people who care about my existence.
Whitebird's executive director, Jeremy Gates, expressed strong support and optimism for Raven's future.
I'm excited for Raven to try to gain a foothold in this space, because whether they're doing this across town or they're doing this, across the street or anywhere else in the state, there's folks in need, and any service provider that can provide any level of service to anybody who needs it is, in my opinion, is fantastic.
Since the Front Room's closure, Whitebird continues to provide meals, mail services, eyeglass vouchers, bus passes, and more at reduced hours. Gates says the hours have been reduced to better align with the level of traffic, making services more efficient. And Weaver thanked First Christian Church for their support of Raven and emphasized the importance of empathy for homeless people, especially in extreme weather.
I really just try to ask folks to put yourself in their shoes, and how would you be acting, or what would your experience be like if this was like your third night sleeping on a cold pavement, or you haven't eaten in 2 days.
In Eugene, Tiffany Lewis reporting.
Raven is currently working toward obtaining 501c3 nonprofit status, but expressed concern about the shifting political landscape as President Trump's executive orders could affect nonprofit eligibility and funding.